Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. Excited to be back, and I gotta say, I am off on my calendar. This was actually supposed to be released last Monday, I believe, and swing and a miss. But here we are. So excited to be back. All right, so a lot going on in this podcast episode. Excited about what we've got lined up in 2025. Can't really forecast too much yet because, you know, when that happens, you end up messing things up. But we are continuing to do our dual version podcast where we have the audio version, and the audio version that is free, of course, on all your RSS feeds, all your podcast featured options, as well as a paid version over on Patreon where it doesn't have all of this intro, all of my additional fluff and updates, that type of stuff. Goes straight into the interview. Again, feedback from you guys. Some of you guys like to be as concise as possible on your commute, so less talky, more action works better there. So we have that. And then, of course, we're trying something new with the video format. So if you're listening to this only, then just know there's video going on. Any interview that we do, where we have a video episode, of course, then we're recording the Zoom call so you can kind of see who we're talking to. And depending on how this goes, it will kind of determine how much more effort we invest in this. For example, one of our most recent episodes, we had the interviewee forward some pictures of his setup in Arizona and high desert stuff. I think it was Weedy. Weedy was doing some really neat things there. And it's like, okay, we really need to visualize this. So we dropped those pictures into the end of the video so those could actually be referenced by those watching the video on YouTube. And of course, same structure there, that if you want to see the video with less of the bumpers, the front end stuff, then of course the video options over there on Patreon at the highest tier, the Boar tier. So that's where we are. And looking at some other options there as we get into more technology, as AI does its thing. I'm not a Luddite, but I'm not a big fan of AI simply because of how it's affecting the job market in key areas that I'm involved in. But anyway, but maybe looking at doing some transcription in the future, but we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I want to give a shout out to our board tier sponsors, and I really appreciate every Patreon member. We've had people join, we've had people go away. I get it; it is what it is, man. I don't expect people to support the Pastured Pig Podcast indefinitely. There's times where you guys find value in it. I'm sure there's times it kind of runs its course for you. So I appreciate the effort that you guys put forward to part with some hard-earned money to support me on Patreon and keep this ball rolling. And but I do want to give a special thanks to our board here. These are the top level people, and they help brace up the whole meat and potatoes of the Pastured Pig Podcast. And so that's John Mosher, John. I hope I'm not slaughtering your name. Mark Purcell, Davis Beam, Tina Viallard, Chuck Lewis, Fritz Seabolt, and Noah West, Rob Dowdle, and then our most recent joinee, supporter here and this month, is Matt D. So Matt, appreciate it. Thanks for coming on board and helping us out here. All right, so some quick updates. One update really is something I think, obviously we're in the kind of the dull season right now. Mud season. As I look out over the pastures, things look a little moist at this point, which is great because I finally broke the drought that we've been having, and broke it well, broke it hard, broke it into mud. So, but what's interesting this time of year, we've been getting pumpkins. So the church we attend is a pretty large church. Multiple thousand people attend the church, and Kelly and I have been at this church for 20 years. I serve on the elder board, so I've been been part of the church body for a long time there. So a lot of people know that we have pigs. Well, the word has gotten out over the past several years that people realize, okay, Troy has pigs, and Troy also likes to give his pigs pumpkins. So all the fall decorations and Halloween decorations and Thanksgiving decorations that people do, they recognize, hey, if I can get Troy to get my pumpkins, that I don't have to worry about throwing them out, or some value is being gained there. A lot of people say, well, you hate to see these things get just thrown away because they've been used for decoration. So we've been receiving copious amounts of pumpkins, and of course the 3 hogs that we have right now, our boar, Mongo, Noel, and Pepper, our 2 older sows. They're really enjoying that. So as they get closer to the end, if you know what I mean, because as you guys know, we're phasing them out. They're getting special treats with all of that. So I like how the timing's working out in that situation. Now I could obviously go down the whole rabbit trail of the benefits of pumpkin other than just bulk nutrition. And we could really start a massive debate. And one of these days, I think we'll take that on. I want to get a point counterpoint type situation. If I can get somebody that really wants to defend pumpkins and their intestinal parasite benefits, and somebody that wants to just totally refute that stance completely, that would be a fun conversation if we could keep it friendly, keep people from calling each other names. But anyway, so I'm not going to go down that path. I'm really kind of indifferent about that. To me, feeding pumpkins, if you've gone to feed them pumpkins and specifically for parasite load, and that's all you're going to do it for, and you're not going to examine, or you're not going to test, you're not going to do other things, more traditional vaccination type situations, and I don't necessarily fall over in that camp. I don't think it's a good idea. When I feed pumpkins, I look at it as a fact of, okay, if there's value, then okay, we've just value added on top of my regular deworming regimen. So that's kind of how I look at it. But really, the thing I like the most about pumpkins, and I think it's kind of funny, is the degree that we get in the spring of what I call poopkins in the pasture. So as the seeds pass through the intestines of the pigs, of course, they're walking all over the woodlot there, dropping what they drop. And at times, those seeds, of course, fall into that, and those seeds remain viable, and you get pumpkin plants that started. So when I see that, sometimes I'll even cordon off that section of the pasture with some temporary electric fence just to let those grow up, and then voila, you've got free mast for the pigs to have and enjoy later in the fall if the deer don't wear them out in the process. So I think it's kind of neat. It's kind of like they're planting their own food at some point. So that's kind of fun. Okay, as always, I want to recognize sponsors, and as I've mentioned before, our sponsors, they kind of span all of our media. So you see maybe Red Tool House, the Pastured Pig, the podcast, the YouTube channels, all those different things. So there's all kinds of things going on in what I call Red Tool House media now. So it'll span the board here. But one thing I wanted to give a shout out for, and this is a company, an American-made company, which I love supporting that. I wish I could get 100% American-made companies, but that's becoming less and less a thing. But I want to give a shout out for Tyler in Giltech. So Giltech is a company in Colorado, and they make these everyday carry devices. Knives are the ones that get my attention. I use the most, and he calls them the Ruck. And you've got different versions of the Ruck knife. And what's neat about it is it's very streamlined. You guys watching the video, you'll see I've got one of the latest. I think this is the V4 Ruck. And so it takes a standard utility knife blade like you'd have in a carpet knife or just a standard utility knife, retractable. And so it holds that. And this thing is super thin. I mean, it's not even a 1/4 inch thick. The one I have is made out of high-grade aluminum. It has some additional features, like it has a little pry device here. It has a little tab like a bottle opener, so you can use it as a bottle opener. And then it also has a little hex element there. So if you happen to carry any little hex drivers or anything, then you can even use it for leverage for screw driving nut socket type thing. But I really like it. It's one of those things where when you look at it as an EDC, you have something that you carry every day. I don't want something big and bulky. I have sensitive skin, so big bulky things in my pocket end up rubbing a hole or creating a sore on my thigh. So something like this is super streamlined. In fact, I like to carry them. I'm trying to put it back in my pocket right now. I like to carry them in the little, I wear jeans a lot, the little coin pocket thing on your right side, because the world's right-handed. God forbid they put one on the left side for us left-handed people. Make sure the pants I'm wearing don't have one. Or say that. No, they don't. So it fits well into that pocket. So it really makes it streamlined and works out great. So Tyler, as I mentioned, he manufactures these in Colorado. He's got his own manufacturing facility there. When I say facility, he's got his own shop, because I love the small scale size of this. Some of the things like the Ruck P, which is a plastic version, I do believe he outsources the plastic molding of that, but that's still in country. But he does the majority of that. But he does his own design, engineers his own stuff, and produces that. So check that out. They're really neat. And, entry point is great on those, especially if you go with the Ruck P. They're great stocking stuffers. They're great things to have just to give to a friend. He sent me a bunch of them branded with our Red Tool House logo, so I give those out from time to time to people. But if you're looking for an EDC, something easy to carry, that's awesome. Just if you fly a lot, don't make the mistake I did, and because you have these everywhere, that you end up walking through TSA with a utility knife on your person. They tend to frown about that. So a couple of mine have gotten surrendered to the TSA. All right, so I'll put a link to his website down in the description so you can check that out. All right, so let's get on with do the intro of our guest. And this, I'm excited to do this. This is an interview that we've been working on for a while now. It's been in the makings for several months, and some's been scheduled, some's just been pre-flight stuff, kind of seeing how they're getting their data together, and just being able to get the planets aligned. But I'm talking today with Ohio State University Extension, specifically Dr. Talita Resende and Kara Flaherty, and they are heading up this focus, this research that they're doing on parasite load in pastured pigs. And they're approaching this not from a standpoint, there's no bias either way on this, that, hey, we're going to prove that pastured pigs are worse or better, all that. They're just simply looking at it and say, we want to understand. We see more and more people doing pastured pigs. And the thing that really excites me about this, other than the obvious, of course, that somebody's doing data on this, that you got Ohio State University, let me say the Ohio State University, for you guys correct me, the Ohio State University investing in this type of research outside of traditional big ag. So to me, it just shows that this is the metamorphosis of hog raising, that when you get big extension universities like this, that usually are just 100% focused on big ag, big production, that type of stuff, and they're now looking over into this, is very, very cool. And as we get in the interview, you see that Dr. Talita, she even has she's from Brazil, so that style of raising hogs is much more natural from where they're from. So it's really neat. So she's kind of taking her experience in Brazil, and then also her knowledge, and she is a PhD, so taking her knowledge and putting that toward this testing. But I'm not going to ruin any more of the surprise. We'll get right into it, let them talk for themselves about what they've got going on. And there's a chance, we'll see. I got to see how the planets align with their timing and when they're going to close out the research, and also when we get new pigs on farm. But we may be participating in this study as well. So that's something I want to kind of plant that seed in your mind right now. Think about if you're in this multi-state region around Ohio, they can actually come on farm. It's all free. Do this type of stuff. Let you participate in the research, and of course share that data with you. But also, if you're not within that region, they're looking at an opportunity for you to collect your own samples and send that in and be a part of this research as well. So be sure to check out in the description. There's a link. They have a section on their website that's dedicated to this entire area. So instead of me trying to give a bunch of different links, I'm going to give you this main link. You go there, but be sure to explore around on that main link, and you can find the information that I'm talking about. All right, so let's go to the Ohio State. And we're going up to the Ohio State University. and we're talking with Dr. Talita Resende and Kara Flaherty from OSU. So, ladies, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Hi, Troy. Thank you for having us. It's a really pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about what we are doing at the Ohio State, nicely pronounced there. I am Talita Resende. I am a faculty member at the Department of Animal Science and Center for Food Animal Health. I've joined the OSU in May last year, 2023. And I have a very interesting appointment. It's not very usual for most of people. I don't teach, so I'm a professor who doesn't teach. I have 80% of extension in my appointment and 20% of applied research. And well, we're going to dive into details of the project that involves Pastured Pigs. But I can say that I've been involved in several fronts of extension projects, and I had Kara joining my team earlier this year in June. So, Kara, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Kara. I'm currently an education program specialist at Ohio State. I'm mainly situated in the Department of Animal Sciences, but I have a half appointment in the Department of Veterinary Preventive Medicine as well. In my role, I mainly do a variety of extension and research projects. So I just kind of help here and there with mostly pig-related things, but I do some work with people as well. I graduated with my bachelor's from Ohio State in May of this year, and then I was fortunate to stay on here at Ohio State a little bit longer.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you. That's a really great introduction. And so I think some people may be scratching their heads right now and say, okay, Troy, Pastured Pig Podcast, why do you have the Ohio State University research people are in this more of large confinement operations here? So ladies, if you would explain the connection, draw that gap there or bridge that gap, but explain what you all been working on in the realm of pastured pigs.
Well, I'm going to start. I didn't give you my credentials, but I have a degree in veterinary medicine and master's in animal pathology from Brazil. I did my PhD here at the University of Minnesota, and throughout my studies, I was focusing on swine infectious diseases in general. And after working a little bit in the industry, as you mentioned, mostly focusing on intensive pig farming, I decided to go back to academia. I taught for a bit without research. And now we are here with, as I just explained, with my appointment mostly dedicated to extension. So while kind of, learning my surroundings and what opportunities I would get to work with extension, I thought, okay, I have all this training in commercial intensive pig farming, but what if I expanded a little bit more and see what other types of rearing systems could do to improve their, their farming process, or what could we learn more from them, I would say, instead of kind of teaching them something. So that's pretty much the idea behind the project that we are doing right now.
Love it. Now, I mean, to me, that's the epitome of education, and research is just continuing to expand your focus, broadening the horizons, looking at those things. And we've talked a little, for those of you listening, to get a little inside baseball. We've had a kind of a pre-meeting last month and talked about some things. And it's really interesting. I was excited to have them on the podcast, because of the topics that we're talking about here with pastured pigs and parasite issues, but just this idea of bridging these gaps that sometimes we think as pastured pig raisers, we're kind of on an island. It's like, okay, we're going to shun a lot of this research, a lot of this mainline recognition of animal welfare and those type of things because, well, we're just doing it better because we're doing it more natural. But there's a beautiful opportunity to overlap those things and share data on both sides. And I really appreciate Dr. Talita's approach to this. So I'm excited to get into this and discuss what you all have been working on because you have a lot of resources available on the website, not only for us, anybody to access, but there's also some ongoing opportunities to even participate, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yes.
But let's do that double click if we Talita, tell us a little bit about when you started looking into pastured pigs. Kind of what got your attention and what was the area of focus that you guys wanted to kind of center in on?
Well, to be very sincere here, everything started with an idea of looking to the microbiome of those pigs that are raised in the pasture. Unfortunately, that project didn't move forward because, things happen in all the areas. But since I was starting getting to contact with, more natural rearing systems, I thought, okay, the microbiome project might not move forward, but I see a great opportunity for learning, like a great learning opportunity here. So instead of, just shutting down and say, okay, I'm not going to do a big research fancy project anymore, what else can I do? Are those people interested in learning a little bit more about their own farms? So that's how it started, and that's how we are moving on. So it's been a very interesting learning curve, right, Kara? I'm gonna give Kara some opportunity to explain to how we are enrolling farms. It's not been an easy task, but we are fortunate enough to be in contact with fantastic people who referred us to others because we understand that if we build those connections, right, and we build trust. So through connections with some producers, they were a little bit more open to receive us and to hear what we had to talk about. With their support, we went to visit other farms. So it's been a very nice connection cycle, I would say. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's how it started and that's how we are moving forward. Okay, so let me take one step back here. So we had that fancy idea on studying microbiome, didn't move forward. And through the connections, I was, okay, what might be one of the primary concerns of pigs that are raised outdoors in pasture? So, of course, parasites come to mind. So that's how we actually started this project. So we were looking uh, for pigs that were raised in pasture, but then we learned that maybe it was a too restrict wording there. So now we are saying, pigs that have contact or they are raised outdoors, have contact with soil. Because this is actually something that we learned, right, Kara? We were talking to some producers and they said, well, I wasn't sure if I could participate because I don't actually have pasture. They are outside, but in sometimes during some months in the year, they are not in pasture because we don't have pasture.
Yeah.
So that's something that probably Troy you understand better, but that's okay. We refine that. So if your pigs have outdoor contact and it's raised in non-concreted areas, that's what we were looking for. Because this system gives the opportunity for parasites to complete their cycles. So that's the idea of not just putting pasture pigs in the title or in the requirement to enroll in the project.
And it really helped for us too. I guess the strict term of pasture was a little bit limiting, at least where we're at in Ohio. But once we kind of made it known that as long as they have some contact to the soil, we ended up with far more farms enrolled than we had initially started with. So that was really helpful. And it kind of helped us to see there's a large difference in spectrum in types of pasture-raised systems. Not every pasture or not every outdoor operation looks the same. So that was very interesting to us as well.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Again, you all adapting to that situation because The term pasture, especially when we're talking about pastured pigs, even the name of this podcast is the Pastured Pig Podcast. And ironically enough, my pigs don't get on my pasture. They stay in the woods. I have some small silvopasture type setups, but anything that I would consider good enough to graze a ruminant, which is very small on my 100 acres because it's all hardwood, they wouldn't have access to. I don't want them. I don't want them on that pristine portion. That's where other animals hang out. So yeah. So to say, well, it's pasture, it's woodlot. There's so many terms that we use, and depending on our background and our experiences, be like, well, this is clearly means this or this means that. But I like the fact that you broaden the scope to say, well, really, what we're trying to do is just look at an entire control or entire universe of farms that can participate as long as their pigs get to step outside and touch the ground. And then I'm sure, like you said, that as you got into that, you've discovered there's so much nuance to that term, and there's so many different welfare practices, especially when we get into rotations and we get into access to food and water and all of those different things that of course affect before we even get into any type of vaccination or medication regimen.
That's a really good point, Troy. And in addition to, of course, looking for some pig poop to look for parasites, we also have developed a survey because we understand that most of the farms that are enrolling, they don't adopt a deworming protocol based on chemicals, I would say. So what are other practices that can be playing a role in that system and that we could correlate with the parasite load or the parasite diversity in the feces that we are collecting? So this is another way to kind of we are still working we are capturing data. We don't have anything yet to share in that regards. But what we are gonna try to see is, okay, I don't know, your pigs don't go to a wood or to a pasture area. They just have they are in a barn that has an outdoor area, and then you have parasites X, Y, and Z. On the other hand, we visited another farm that had a very full rotation of pasture, and they had, ABC parasites. So we are going to try to contrast those farming systems. Both don't deworm with chemicals, but they have different management practices. So we are going to try to see if there is something that's more protective, if we can say so, or that helps to decrease the parasite load or diversity in the pigs.
Interesting. So, excuse me, my goodness, yeah, that opens, pardon the pun, a whole can of worms, because there's so much debate, even in our genre of pig raising, when we talk about pastured pigs or outdoor pig raising, where people want to say, okay, I'm going to be dogmatic about my medication regimen. So like I use chemicals to deworm at weaning time. There's a specific time that I do that here on my farm. But then I talk to others like, oh my goodness, Troy, you've really embraced the whole industrial ag thing. I use pumpkins and diatomaceous earth, and I do this, or I rotate. But a lot of us find that we get into these habits because that's just what we've established, and we think we get good results, but we're really not backing that up with a lot of data. It's not like we're doing fecal studies and sending anything off or having it tested. So we kind of develop these regimens based on, well, I think this is just what works for my farm. So I love the fact that you all are putting out this invitation to participate. And then, of course, gathering all this data and when it's ready to go, be shareable with all of us to be able to see, wow, okay, here's data that backs up some of these practices that we've embraced.
Yeah, so I full transparency, I am not a veterinarian and I am not a veterinary student. So I want to just make it kind of aware and make it known here at the beginning that by doing this project, we're not necessarily advising producers to do one thing or another with deworming. Our main goal isn't to convince you to adopt a deworming protocol or convince you to not adopt a deworming protocol. We just want to paint the picture for you and, of course, for the greater swine industry of here's what's going on our pasture-raised operations in terms of parasite load. We want you to be able to use that to make an informed decision for yourself. Dr. Resende does have a veterinary background, so she does provide, a good perspective in that term. But it's always best to kind of think through in your own way what you want to do with your protocol. Contact your personal veterinarian to talk about a deworming protocol. But our project at least helps you to better understand, here's what I'm seeing on my personal farm. Here's what's going on here.
Excellent. Yes, Kara, I
Exactly.
appreciate you mentioning that, and that's kind of a disclaimer. So I actually have this written down in my notes for our discussion today, because I find myself, when you have people on that have the experience and the background and the education they have, you want to, okay, what should I do here? What should I do there? I need your advice on this type of thing. And I promised that I wouldn't do that, because I don't want to paint them in a corner, and that's not really why they're here. They're not here to give specific treatment advice. And I appreciate that, because I think it allows your study to be even more pure, to say, okay, we're not coming in here with a specific agenda or a preconceived notion. We're not trying to get the data to illustrate this or debunk that. We're going to see what the data produces and then just share that information and that finding. So appreciate that, and I'll try to refrain from asking specific veterinary questions, although you smack me on the hand if I do, because they're definitely something that roll through my mind. So I love the genesis of this, and you've explained that. So you're kind of looking at microbiome studies, trying to go in that direction. Things didn't work out, so I always joke, it's think fastball, adjust for the curve. So being able to be nimble and say, okay, well, let's do this, and let's see where's the value in this, and what value can we bring to the table with these farms. So drilling down into that, Talita, what type of, hey, maybe look at your universe, your control. So let's talk about the geography of these farms that are participating. Is there a limitation on that? Is it boots on the ground from OSU individuals that need to come there? Are we mailing you fecal samples? What exactly are we doing to participate in that? And how many farms do you have in, and how many do you like to get at some point before the study's finished?
Yeah, perfect question. I'll start and let Kara continue. So far we have visited, I believe, 11 or 12 farms, but I'll let Kara correct me in a bit. At the beginning, we were looking for Ohio farms because, I am at the Ohio State working with extension money from Ohio. But we got such a good connection with farms in Indiana that we decided to extend it a little bit. So as for now, we have 4 farms in Indiana and the rest from Ohio. Of course, if you are, far away, I don't know, we have some farmers willing to participate, and they were in South Tennessee or North Carolina. We try to combine farms around and make it like a one trip and go. Unfortunately, it didn't work out well. So I would say that if you are in Ohio or surrounding states, we can stretch a little and go pay a visit, especially if you have neighbors or friends that would like to participate, so we can take the most of we can from a trip. Carol, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so I believe you're right in that as of right now, we have 11 farms that have participated, again, 4 in Indiana and then the other handful in Ohio. Where we're at right now, I would say, is we're trying to do as many kind of farms close to us as possible, but we're not shut down to the idea of doing things further away. And we have discussed the possibility of having mailed in samples. But we are a little picky in that these fecal samples that we're collecting, we are actually boots to the ground collecting fresh, be it freshly dropped or, right from the pig's butt. So we have a guide for collecting your own samples at home. And if we do have some farms interested further away from us, we will cover shipping cost for the samples that you send in, and you'll still receive the complete report of what is going on with the samples and then some guidance from there. But we're kind of doing this on a case-by-case basis right now. We've been a little slow at the moment. So if you're interested, definitely feel free to contact us and we'll see what we can do for you.
I would like to comment on that. This project, it doesn't have external funding. So I'm using my own university funding because I feel it's worth it. Therefore, this is why we can afford the shipping. If you are far from us and we cannot make the trip there, we actually enjoy going to the farms, right, Kara? We like to meet the farmers in person and talk a little bit about what's going on, be in contact with pigs. We've seen amazing things. Like we visited a farm that had uh, 12 years old couple of pigs. So they are grandma and grandpa. This is so unique, you know? So if
Hmm.
I have the opportunity to go and meet other farmers and get to see like non-traditional pigs like that, I would love to. But if it's far and we cannot make it to the farm, we do have as Kara mentioned, submission advice or tips that you could use. And we are also lucky enough to have partnership with two other very nice professors from they are from the OSU Vet School. Dr. Andrea Ruda helped us designing the project, and she's going to help us to analyze the data. And Dr. Antoinette Marsh, she is a veterinary pathologist, and she's running the samples in her lab for us. So, you know, we are well equipped to do this analysis. For now, as I still have some money to put into this project, we are doing everything for free. What we want from you, of course, the samples, not from you, from your pigs,
Right,
the
right.
samples. And in exchange, like Kara, the samples and the answer, this anonymous survey answers. We have this survey, it's de-identifiable, but as I mentioned before, we want to collect the management practices and kind of compare to the results you're having to kind of give you back, okay, you're doing this, or you have a lot or just a few parasites on your pigs. And along with the parasitology test results, we prepare, we kind of tailor, I would say, a summary of the parasites that are found in your farm. So you don't have, you know, like a whole book on the things that you might not be interested right now. So if you have one or two, we are going to make a few paragraphs, put a few pictures there for you to understand what's going on. And we are in the process of preparing a fact sheet, you know, very accessible language, talking about intestinal pig parasites. So, okay, I know I have only two types of parasites here, but I want to learn about what I could have or my pigs could have. So we are preparing that material. It's on the process.
Awesome. Excellent. And I think that's, well, there's so much to unpack there. So I'm going to back up a little bit and we'll maybe kind of try to thread the needle if I can keep the squirrels in my head going in the right direction. So we talked about the opportunity of mailing in samples, but ideally boots on the ground. So other than the process, Kara, that you mentioned in which you collect, so you'd like to collect in a certain way, there's a certain process that you do. Is there any other thing that you're doing when you're on farm? Are you looking at management practices? Are you laying eyes on specific things? Are you taking soil samples? Is there anything that you're doing there that wouldn't be done if somebody was just mailing in samples themselves?
Yeah, so we have taken some soil samples in the past. They're not being included explicitly in the project at hand, but we have taken some soil samples.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think if that was something that a farmer were interested in, I think we could make that work. Outside of that, we're also, with permission from the farmer themselves, we have been taking pictures of the pasture at hand, seeing some differences there between farm to farm. It helps us kind of do a little bit of a background characterization of some of the differences we see physically. But again, a lot of our work is through that survey. We ask questions about management practices. So that's feed schedules, what feed consists of. We asked about veterinary and deworming protocols. We also do look to see if there are any other animals on the farm. So if you have other livestock, whether they're kept in the same pasture as the pig or if they're kept, adjacently or in another area on the farm, we do look into that. So it's a pretty good mix, I'd say, of visual observation and
Mm-hmm.
then some of that hard collected data.
Yeah. Yeah, so it just allows the data to be more robust simply because you're looking at maybe some other inputs or other conditions that would help draw some conclusions as the data is being laid out. Excellent. What's the term? How far out are we going? I know, like if I think in my specific situation, as we're phasing out a specific breed line right now and kind of rebooting our herd this spring, in the next 3-4 months really wouldn't make sense for me to be doing anything. But 6 months from now, possibly I could be, hey, y'all, would you all want to come down? I'm only 3 hours from Columbus, so come on down and let's do some things here. What's the timeline you're looking at?
Well, Kara and I actually we talked yesterday to kind of be on the same page here. We acknowledge that, as we mentioned before, farm enrollment it's not been easy. So we kind of set up the end of the year to enroll farms, but this was before we met you. So we believe that through the podcast we might get more people interested. So in that case, we would not be actively, contacting people, but we are more than welcome and open to enroll more farms until the end of spring. So that's the idea. And something that you mentioned, Troy, and I wanted to make it clear is that some producers might think, oh, but I'm selling my pigs. Why would I want to sample them now? It's actually really interesting because as you're using the same area over and over, even if you're rotating the pigs, by sampling the animals you have right now or that you have in a couple of months, it kind of sets the baseline for you to understand what might happen to the next lot. Or if you see, let's say, Troy, that you don't do any deworming practice, you do rotation, pasture rotation, area rotation. Let's not use the pasture word here. If you do area rotation and you see that your pigs have a high load of parasites or high diversity, you kind of can expect, if you don't do anything different, that the next lot of pigs might have something similar. So it's kind of a preventive way to see, okay, I might do something different now. Instead of rotating them every 7 days, I'm going to rotate them I'm going to put one downtime between pastures. So every 15 days and one area will be empty, manage better your area. And another thing that I wanted to mention, and I don't know if you would ask or not, but it's just, as you said, it crossed my mind here, and it's something that I really need to mention. That you might say, oh, but my pigs, they don't have diarrhea. They're not losing weight. I don't care. It's fine. They are so healthy. Wow, that's excellent. However, one of the most important things with intestinal parasites, and even with some bacteria and some viruses, is that they can be there. You don't see clinical signs. You don't see diarrhea. They're not losing weight. But at the same time, they're not growing as they could be growing if they had a lower infection rate.
Exactly.
Is that clear? I mean,
absolutely.
It doesn't matter if you don't see diarrhea or weight loss. It doesn't mean that you couldn't be doing better.
Exactly.
So,
and yes, I love that fact, because with many of us that are raising our pigs the way that we are, we're not necessarily just doing it for personal consumption, that we're looking at this from a commercial standpoint. And when we're farrow to finish, then we're looking at characteristics in our pigs to establish breed lines. So to your point, if we've got a parasite load that we don't think we have because we're not seeing any hard evidence, then we could say, wow, okay, that breed line has a good propensity genetically to handle a parasite load, but how much better would it be if we had that cleared out? And then, it just really gets me thinking about it, knowing, and of course with that data sharing, to say, okay, like you said, if we looked at all the intestinal parasite, the spectrum of options there, but we have data that comes back and says, well, Troy, you have these two specific intestinal parasites. And then I can say, okay, well, what do I need to do to eradicate those? Well, we've got tons and tons of evidence and research and science that backs up, okay, these can best be handled A and B. And maybe it changes my regimen. Maybe it even changes my view on a prohibition against some sort of medical treatment instead of more natural or rotational processes. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. And we do find that all the time. We say, well, it's kind of the vernacular of if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of thing. I'm getting good hanging weights. I'm getting good yield. My feed conversion seems to be okay, but we don't have as many controls as more confinement operations do. So when I say, okay, I use this many pounds of feed to finish out 20 hogs over the course of 7 months, then I can do my feed conversion. But it's really not looking at maybe some of the spoilage on the ground, not looking at weather-related issues, because sometimes we do have waste when a hard system comes in and water gets blown into our mobile feeders. And then, of course, just the all the little flora and fauna, well, not the flora, but the fauna that want to come by and take advantage of some of the open feed as well. So I think we want to analyze those type of things and say, well, I really want to understand my feed conversion when it comes to waste. But we sometimes shun that, well, the medical thing, that's something I'm not the most educated on, and it's something that I can't see it as easily. So I'm, out of sight, out of mind. Ignorance is bliss, maybe to some degree. And just an apprehension to really embrace the need to explore those situations. So I love that. I'm so glad you brought that up.
And there's another comment to that, because it can be the other way around too. Let's say that we return your results. You have some. It's very expected to have some level of infection there when you're not deworming at any time, using any time of deworming protocol. But then, okay, so you have that, your pigs are doing really well, your feed conversion is excellent. What if in the next lot something happens?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to blame the feed only, or maybe the next lot of pigs got something in their intestines. Mm-hmm. So it's a baseline. So it's okay, I have this now, I have the knowledge of what's going on. I can use this and in the future, if everything is good now, should anything happen, what variables I can analyze to see what might be going wrong. Mm-hmm. So it's like two sides of the coin, if you want to look at it this way. Maybe you're not doing as good as you could right now, or maybe you are, and who knows what's going to happen in the future, right? Can be parasites. Because another point here is that, and probably most of your listeners know about it, but I really want to mention that too. Parasite eggs and cysts, they are extremely resistant in the environment, especially in soil. So this is why we want the pigs to be, in contact with soil to do the study. So if you're building up, for every lot, the pigs are shedding a little bit of cysts or eggs, and you're not doing a lot to kind of decrease the parasite load in that area, there might be a point in which you cross that threshold and pigs start losing weight and having diarrhea.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree 100%. And there's even, like you said, we may feel that, okay, we're in a spot right now that we're really comfortable with what we're seeing, maybe even have had some testing done and we're not seeing any parasites, but there's so many opportunities to introduce, especially in an outdoor environment. Feral hogs are becoming more and more an issue throughout a lot of the country, where they're starting to creep into our state, and I know Ohio is seeing some of them as well. But so of course there's an opportunity for something to cross our path. I think of my situation when I started over 10 years ago. We were closed loop, and so we did AI, we did farrow to finish, so nobody knew was coming on the farm. But when I started buying new genetics, then I'm getting pigs from a reputable farmer who says, well, I've done this and that. Well, you take the farmer's word for it, maybe, but you really don't know. He may not even know. You don't know and what could possibly show up. And then also situations where people say, hey, I've got a boar that I'm bringing in from somebody else. So all of that input. And then if you want to go full-blown biosecurity, hey, my friend who's got a farm, he he came over to visit, and he was wearing his boots that he had in his pig lot, and guess what he had on his boots, and then now he walked through my pig lot. So all of those type of things, like you say, Talita, can cause a change to happen. And we may think, hey, we're solid now, but something can make that change dramatically. And then we start seeing evidence of that. So raising that awareness and increasing our education, not only of what's potentially there, what is actually there, and then, of course, the treatment protocols that go along with the specific things we found.
Yes, and Kara might want to comment on the unfortunately or fortunately or expectedly, we do have some parasites that might be transmitted through pigs to humans, right, Kara?
Yeah, we do. So are we going to talk about results in a few minutes, or can I jump into some of those now?
Go for it.
Okay. So I'm first going to mention that as of right now, out of the 11 or 12 farms that we've sampled, all but one have tested positive for at least one parasite. Now, we do have some data already published and available for you guys to look at. I think Troy will upload that in the notes of this podcast episode. But looking at some of the results that we have from the first 5 farms that we sampled, we're really seeing a pretty good range of the types of parasites that are being observed and the frequency or how much we've been observing those parasites. So notably, the main ones that we've been seeing so far are Ascaris sum and Coccidia. These are 2 parasites that we've been seeing right now, but we've also been seeing some strongyloides and some Giardia here and there. So there's really been a wide range of parasites that we're seeing. And not all of these are a direct threat to humans, and none of these parasites that we're seeing right now are a threat to foodborne pathogens to humans. So when you eat the product that you're raising, if that's what you do with it, you're not going to get sick from these parasites that we're finding. However, if you do come into contact with, the pig feces or with, contaminated surfaces on your farm, there is some potential risk of zoonotic transmission there. So while it's not, a major concern from a food safety perspective, there, of course, is that little concern for you there as well.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate it.
Especially when we are talking about kids and elderly, they are, of course, that's not only related to pig transmitted diseases, but they are more susceptible to infectious diseases in general, right? Mm-hmm. So this is why we wanted to bring it up, because it's also important to know, because maybe you have your kids helping your farm, or your parents that's at a more older age. So it's not that they shouldn't be working there, but you might want to take a few extra protective steps to decrease the possibility of having them sick.
Yeah, and that's great. I'd like to camp out on that for a second, because you're going to educate me a little bit here, but also I think it's just kind of good to talk through this. So some of us, when we go more towards, some of our listeners are more of the homestead level, so they're raising their own food for personal consumption, not necessarily selling it for others to consume. So when we do that, a lot of us process on farm, and hopefully all of us have a good hygiene regimen when it comes to processing, but we got to make sure we don't fall into this false trap of saying, well, I have a very natural process, so I'm going to hang my pig here. I'm going to start breaking it down into primals here. A lot of that's done outdoors, like our forefathers used to. But just keeping in mind something. So you mentioned Giardia, and of course, when I think of Giardia, I always think of beaver fever and think of water contamination. And so, what conclusions? So is it safe to say, Kara, when we see Giardia and some of these other things, that we are indeed finding those in the feces? So they are indeed being hosted by the pigs. They're not the source. The pig is not the source, but they are being hosted by the pig. So the pig is allowing the Giardia to go through its life cycle because it's going through intestines, feces, and then, of course, getting picked up again. Is that safe to say?
So I will kind of give you a primer in that we're seeing very low levels of Giardia.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there's no need to be too worried
Alarmed.
about,
Right, right.
no need to be alarmed or too worried about finding Giardia in your pigs. But yeah, there is some concern there for that. If Giardia is in the pigs, that does most likely mean that it's in other places in the environment as well. And we know that with soil, you may be seeing it in the groundwater or in other water sources near your house. And in, a homesteading system, it is important to kind of think of the holistic environmental approach, and that if you're using every aspect of the environment, and if your crops that you're consuming yourself are close to the pigs that you're raising, there is that potential source of contamination there. So with that, of course, it's important that regardless of what kind of system that you're working in, whether it be homesteading or even in conventional systems, the food safety piece is always important too. Always, you know, harvesting in a food safe manner and cooking and consuming in a food safe manner. Because although, these aren't necessarily transmitted through foodborne routes, it is still important to keep in mind any other pathogens that may be in the environment are taken care of as well.
Excellent.
Very nicely commented, Kara. And something that we make sure to add into the summary, Troy, is that we repeat that sentence over and over. Consumption of pig, like pork, from a pig infected with ascarisum, if it's properly cooked, there's no risk. So we always add that sentence because we don't want to kind of say, oh my gosh, you were in trouble here.
Right.
Just as you mentioned, we do expect some level of hygiene during the preparation of that, like making the cuts and everything. And I forgot to mention, and I am actually really proud of it. My parents grew up in a farm, very small farm. I was born and raised in the city, but now my parents retired and are back into the countryside. And once in a while, they raise 1 or 2 pigs for our own consumption. Well, I'm not there anymore, but they still do it. And I totally understand, the processing part of it, how you butcher a pig in a homestead way, and how it can be, my family has this high hygiene level. I never got sick eating those kind of pork. But as Kara nicely mentioned, for most of these parasites here that we are observing that has a zoonotic potential, which means transmission from animals to humans, it's through other ways that's not pork related. It's like you're using where is your water coming from? Do you have like a creek that crosses where pigs are being raised, which is totally expected, right? If you have pigs in the pasture and they are drinking natural water, that's okay. But are you using that water down the road to water your garden? That's the risk that we want to make everybody aware of, not to set the alarm and say, hey, you need to be freaking out right now, but just be careful because there is a potential risk here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know that any of our audience would say, "Wow, I didn't know that," or I'll even refute that.
Yeah.
Although these days, I just wonder what people will refute when it comes to science. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. But
Yes.
looking at that and saying, okay, wow, I didn't make that connection. So, like on our farm, we have 2 small tributaries that come together. One is in the valley that drains from our woodlot. So even when I like to take our golden retriever up to one area and let him swim, do all that type of stuff. Well, I take him to the other one. So like, I don't necessarily want him swimming in the creek that drains the pig woodlot. But anyway, just little things like that. But like you said, even pulling water. So on our farm, we like to draw a lot of water from those streams for watering our chickens, and then of course watering the garden, and do a lot of rain collection as well. So just setting in our minds these best practices to say, this is an ecosystem and all of these things are connected to one another. So if you have this over here, chances are you're going to have it over there if you're using the resources from that section to move them there. And one other thing that you mentioned, and I think it's just really important to underscore, and it kind of comes back to your point, Talita, of saying, well, I've not seen evidences, so it must not be an issue. And I was just looking real quickly. So, thinking of, because I think you mentioned coccidia. So thinking of coccidia, when you look at it in chickens, then that can prove to be fatal. But we can have coccidia and giardia, and of course, I think of giardia when friends I know that have taken trips and they're using their water purifiers and they don't get them right, and it's like, hey, I got beaver fever, and it just absolutely crushed me for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily see, a pig can be totally asymptomatic when it comes to that. So it just kind of keeps re-emphasizing what you're saying, that just because you don't see symptoms doesn't mean those parasites do not exist.
Exactly. And Troy, you mentioned the coccidia and the chicken coccidia. I received a call from one of our enrolled farms. The farmer was really concerned. Oh my God, I see coccidia here. I want to clarify here because I know it's a concern. Mm-hmm. The coccidia that infects chickens is not the same that infect pigs.
Oh, very good. So
they are kind of species specific.
Okay.
For the most important ones for each species.
Gotcha.
So that's a good thing. If you enroll in our study, we are going to add that into the summary. But it's nice that you brought it up, because when people take a look in our preliminary results, they know, okay, I see coccidia here, mm-hmm. And we don't say the species name. It's Cystoisospora suis or Emeria, because using the technique that we are using, it's not possible to distinguish them. Mm-hmm. But we know from other research that there is not a cross infection between the chicken coccidia that's so bad, with the pig coccidia that's usually mild.
Very good.
So just to clarify that.
Yes, thank you. That's great.
But, yes, and that's exactly the point. If you're not seeing signs, it doesn't mean that you don't have it. And if you don't have it now, it doesn't mean that you won't have it in the future.
Right. Very good. Very good. So I want to be sensitive to your all's time, so I'm keeping an eye on the clock here. But so let's talk about this. So I think it's important to do more of just my standard call to action at the end. If you want to know more, visit blah blah blah. So if you would, either of you, if listening to what we've talked about, if our listeners are saying, hey, I'm interested. I'm not quite sure what my next step is. Let's get into that a little bit. But I do want to underscore with a key disclaimer that this is purely research. There is absolutely no regulatory element to this whatsoever. And I know that's some people bristle immediately to say, wait a minute, somebody with a lot of initials at the end of their name is coming to my farm. That could spell trouble for me. Somebody could report something, and there's no regulatory elements of this whatsoever. This is purely research, and it's purely for the benefit of us, the farmer, because it's good data and it's also free. So with that being said, if y'all wouldn't mind, mm-hmm. what would be the next step? Somebody listening to this podcast or watching our video says, hey, I want to know more, or I want to enroll. What are my next steps?
Yeah, so like you said,
Kara, just a second. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to talk about it, but I want to reinforce that when we go to farms, it's of course with the farmer consent. We have a consent form that you need to sign to enroll in the study. The survey is anonymous. We are not relating your farm to the results that we later on get. Of course, we are sharing the results with you. But later on down the road, if we are presenting this data in a conference or something, your farm will never be related to any kind of results. And so there's no regulatory issue at all. This is, as Troy mentioned, is purely research. And there's no way to connect your farm with the results that we will be spreading out, right? Because that's another point of extension. We are collecting data. We are providing producers with the specific results for them, for their pigs. But we also want to collect the overall data and share with other producers. Like, hey, we visited 20 farms. Though this is the summary of what we found in relation to parasites and to management practices. So other people who did not enroll in the study, they can kind of learn from what we collected. So that's the idea, Troyce. Thank you for bringing that up. I could never leave this podcast episode without mentioning that.
Right, perfect.
And now, Kara, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I do have the website here, Kara. So maybe I'll share my screen and then you go over and explain what we have. Got it wrong, of course.
It's okay. Yeah, so I'll do this real quick while that's setting up. If you're listening to the audio version, of course, the video version will be available on YouTube. You can see this, but we'll also have a link to the website below in the show notes. Go ahead, Kara.
So this is the Ohio Pork Information Center. This is just porkinfo.osu.edu. This is essentially our pork extension team's website for all things pork related. It's ongoing, up and in the works, so it's in progress. We're definitely adding more as the days go by. So for the pig intestinal parasites project, you can see we have its own drop-down arrow there, or it slides across on that homepage there. So you'll just click read more, and it'll bring you to a brief overview of the study. As we've mentioned today, intestinal parasites are important for all pig systems, maybe even more so given the outdoor nature of a pasture-raised setting. So that's kind of the primer here. But when we're getting into how to participate, everything is voluntary. So if you're listening and you're not interested, that's okay. But if you are interested, we're definitely more than welcome to have you. We have some brief inclusion criteria. It's very loose. Of course, we talked about how we're located in Ohio. So in the surrounding states, that would be most easy for us to travel to you. All we ask is that your pigs have some contact with outdoor access or outdoor soil. They don't need to be exclusively on the ground all the time. We are okay with some structures here and there that the pigs can go into. Soil is loose as long as there's some soil. It doesn't need to be, fresh, green, flat land. It can be in the woods. There can be any type of soil. You're welcome. All samples that we collect, we do by hand. So we'll either follow behind you or follow behind the pig and collect freshly dropped species. We want to make sure that if it has touched the ground, it's fresh and we're only taking, the top part of the feces that had no contact with whatever it touched on the ground. Or while this may sound invasive, it actually is very minimally invasive. We'll gently insert 1 or 2 fingers into the pig rectum and gently scoop out a little bit of the feces. This does not hurt the pigs. Sometimes they will talk back to us as would you if you were having poop scooped from your butt. So we do it that way as well. And then the sample we take with us, we'll label it with the pig's age, so we can help you distinguish kind of between what pigs may have what, if you have different groups or if you have different ages on the farm. And then all of the samples are processed at Ohio State's College of Veterinary Medicine, where they do all of the parasitology testing. Depending on how many samples that we collect, it can normally take up to a week for samples to be collected and then for the data to be back in your hands. So expect a little bit of time in between, but not more than a week for you to get some results. And then, like we mentioned, we'll have that full write-up of what we found on the farm and what this means for your operation. And then contrastly, if you're interested in participating, but you are far away, don't discount yourself yet. We don't want to count you out just because you're located, 6 hours away or something. There is that potential again for us to maybe come out. If you know 4 farms in your area, we could come out and do multiple farms at one time. Or we can discuss the possibility of you collecting samples on your own and then mailing it to us. You'll get all the same benefits. Everything is the exact same. The only The only hard part is you yourself are collecting the poop, so I understand how that could scare you away. Now that I've covered all of that, you can see here our contact information. Feel free to contact either myself or Dr. Resende. We'll give Troy our emails and then phone numbers for you to be able to reach out to us, and we'll be able to get something set up either in person or from afar, and then we'll go from there.
Perfect, perfect. And you had mentioned, and I think you're showing it right now, that there is some preliminary findings, a report that you are sharing. It looks like it's an 84-page document, PDF downloadable on the website. So I'll make sure that we link to that as well. If for some reason you can't find it, then it is on that website that Kara was just talking about. So all that information resides in one spot. And yes, the picture there that you're showing right now, its caption says Kara and Talita visiting one of the enrolled farms. That picture brings something to mind, as we had mentioned earlier, biosecurity. You all are practicing a really, really good level of biosecurity when you visit these farms. In that picture, you all are suited up like full hazmat.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that, and I think it's good to point that out when we're not inviting somebody who's typhoid Mary here bringing stuff to your farm. They are suiting up. They are recognizing biosecurity practices when they come to visit.
Yes, we'll do full PPE. So normally that's like a Tyvek suit. That'll be, covering the whole body, and then we'll do boot covers. Additionally, we wear gloves. We swap gloves out between each pig. We make sure to clean everything as much as possible. Any reused materials like containers, they'll be cleaned out prior to visiting. And most of the time, we do also pick up a rental vehicle. In addition to us both making sure we have downtime between going to farms, so a couple days in between visits, we will also bring a rental car. So we know that's nice and clean for us. It's not a personal car that we're dragging around to a whole bunch of farms. So we've got some strict biosecurity in there just so we can keep you guys safe and make sure that your pigs are as healthy as possible.
Do you ever not
One
get...
more comment in
Oh, sorry.
relation to that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Troy.
No,
It's because we mentioned that we might want to combine farm visits in one trip. That's the reason that we are mentioning that. We understand that biosecurity in this kind of operations is not as restrict as when we are comparing to conventional intensive farming. And when we do that, it's of course with the allowance of all farmers involved, and we do change Tyvek suits and boot covers and gloves and everything. And for the farms that we visited in the same day, they were all related in relation to, they were sharing the same source of pigs, and they allowed us to do that. We took care of the biosecurity measures that were possible in that situation that we were visiting more than one farm in a day. So it's feasible, but it depends on the farmer allowance in relation to that. Okay, might not be ideal if we are doing intensive farming. We won't be doing that in that case, but it depends on how you raise your pigs and how your system is run.
Yeah, and most of us, if we've been doing this for more than a couple of years, we've established our own biosecurity protocols that we like. So if it's something simple as, hey, if you don't mind, just park over here. It's nowhere near. It's downstream of my pig access, so it's no big deal there. New Tyvek suit, things are fine. So that's great. So I have to ask, this is the juvenile in me, when it's time to collect direct rectal samples, do you and Talita like draw straws? Do you take turns, or does she always pull rank and say it's you pulling the samples?
We take turns. I didn't grow up around pigs. I didn't have much pig contact before this role. With this project was my first time collecting pig fecal samples.
Very good.
So Dr. Resende did teach me how to, put the finger up there and pull out. So I try to be as hands-on as possible and jump in when I can. But generally, if I am struggling, she can normally come clean up bat for me.
Yeah.
So she'll get it done.
Well, it's a
I,
character.
I let Kara do some work, and then if she's not lucky enough, I'll jump there
Very good. Well,
and do it.
that's a character building opportunity. I always tell my boys who are young adults now that they've got to experience years of castrating piglets, and there's character that comes from that. It's a unique experience that they can say not too many people their age have been able to participate in that type of experience. So
It's
True.
humbling. It's humbling. It's fun though.
yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you all so much. This has been a great conversation. I'm looking at the clock here, and I've gone longer than I would normally go, especially for you. I know you've got a lot going on right now, but I really appreciate y'all taking the time to come on the show and share this information with you. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the effort in gathering data, and I really appreciate the fact that you're expanding your horizons to reach out into more of our processes and encouraging us to expand our horizons and reach out and embrace more of the research and the academic side of pig raising that you guys are bringing to the table. So I think it's a great opportunity to bridge that gap that's been forming just because of everybody wants to choose size. Well, they're over here with the CAFOs. We're over here doing our own thing. I really appreciate what you all are doing and extending this effort into our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you
We
so
couldn't do it
much.
without you.
Troy. Was a very nice opportunity to talk about this project. Kara and I are very enthusiastic about this project. We look forward to every visit that when we schedule it, and we will be waiting for whoever wants to participate. So please reach out to us, and we'll be glad to have you enrolled.
Perfect. Well, you all stay on the line here. I'm going to wrap us up and we can talk about some details off camera. But for everyone listening, I appreciate you listening. Be sure to check out the show notes. And again, if you want to see the video version of this, you can just simply go over to our YouTube channel. That link will be there as well, and you can check that out. Well, I really appreciate Talita and Kara coming on the podcast. Enjoyed that conversation with them. And man, I just want to strongly urge you to check out that link down in the description and go see what Ohio State's got going on specifically on this project. And keep checking back as they get more data uploaded. Then they'll be sharing that there as well. If you'd like to be on the podcast or know somebody that should be on the podcast, by all means, use the best way to do it is use our website link, thepasturedpig.com. Use the contact form there for the podcast. That's a little bit of pre-screening info that just gives me some intel on what to expect, and I can reach out to you and get that scheduled faster. Well, I appreciate everybody listening. I pray you all have a great week. Take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.